I recently read an article about why you should be listening to video game soundtracks while you work, and it made me think about how important a soundtrack is to a game. I've reviewed hundreds of indie games and played hundreds of AAA titles, and for the first time it hit me. A big advantage that AAA studios have over the little guy is their ability to include really great music. Final Fantasy, The Elder Scrolls, Halo, and insert many other big budget titles here all have incredibly memorable OSTs that have done as much for them as the gameplay has. Gaming is immensely popular, more than it ever has been before, and many of the songs that we hear while playing are now embedded into popular culture more than we might realize. What makes a good soundtrack though? Well, I think there are a few things. There's a certain amount of subtlety that goes along with a good soundtrack, and because of that, music is oftentimes taken for granted or forgotten. Oftentimes, the mark of a good background song is that you don't consciously realize you've listened to it over 50 times. It becomes a part of the game's world, and you know it backward and forward without ever feeling tired of it. This process can come from an original soundtrack or just a compilation of songs. For instance, I can't name more than one of the songs in Skyrim, but I know them all because that original masterpiece was always playing during my hundreds of hours in Tamriel, setting the mood, providing ambiance, and changing my life without me ever realizing it. On the other hand, there are hundreds of songs that I know the lyrics to that I would never have even tried listening to because of Madden soundtracks over the years. I would say that 10 to 20% of the music that makes it onto my playlist comes from that, sports games that bring together collections of great songs to play on the menu while you're managing and navigating everything that you need to. Whether it's an original soundtrack or a well thought out mixtape, the music that we hear playing while we game impacts our memories and experience by creating a subtle world that is almost entirely responsible for our absorption. Soundtracks also must be memorable. There are plenty of moments in gaming that are associated with the song that plays in your head when you think about them fondly. What would the Psycho Mantis fight in Metal Gear Solid be without that ominous hymn that plays before and during the encounter? And how would we think of that final showdown with Sephiroth without One Winged Angel playing in the background? I'm listening to it while writing this, and it makes me want to go play Final Fantasy VII again right freaking now. I know I'm talking about Metal Gear and Final Fantasy again because, well, that's what I do. But think about your favorite game and I can guarantee you attach a song to a particular moment or time in your life when you were playing it. I ran across the soundtrack for an old PS1 game called N-Gen Racing the other day, and the comments were filled with the same thing that it made me feel. Sweet baby Jesus, the nostalgia. I haven't played that game in at least 15 years, but the songs came back to me as if I had played it yesterday, and I immediately remembered everything about the game. Memory is a powerful thing, and it influences how much we love these things even if you play them a decade later and realize, wow, this actually wasn't that great of a game. But it doesn't matter because hearing that soundtrack makes you think of it fondly. It's an indescribable feeling. Have you ever ran across a mixtape you made 10 years ago or found your old MP3 player and looked through it? That feeling you get when you think, I haven't heard this in years, but this used to be my jam, right? The same thing happens with video games, and the number one reason are the soundtracks. Without the particular music that plays in the background, many of our favorite titles and franchises wouldn't be memorable, they would just be another average game. But aside from being memorable, soundtracks set the mood and the tone for every experience that we have. Final Fantasy is another good example of this, so I'll use it again. I don't care, I can't stop myself, okay? But would the calm lands in Final Fantasy X really feel like the calm lands if it weren't for the music that accompanies that area? And would Jecht feel like the badass that he is without Otherworld playing while you fight him? Of course not. Soundtracks do 90% of the work to set the tone and emotion in a game, and without it, I probably would never have fought back tears during certain end scenes. We talk a lot about devs and game designers, showering them with love and hatred, criticism and adoration, but the true world builders are the composers. Without them, games wouldn't come to life, and they wouldn't create an emotional response. Instead of touching us and placing us in a different world from our own, they would just be a game. As gaming has expanded, so has the market for composers and music creation. During the earlier years, it was more common for companies to have their soundtracks produced in-house by a team that were already on staff. But as time went on and the industry was more lucrative, companies started outsourcing to independent contractors who produce soundtracks on a contractual basis. Martin O'Donnell of Halo fame didn't follow this mold, but most AAA development teams no longer have a dedicated music team. The result has been an incredible number of titles with fantastic soundtracks and the growth of video game music as its own genre. Video game award shows have increased in popularity over the past several years, and most of them have a category for Best Original Score. Recent winners have included Nier Automata, Doom 2016, Metal Gear Solid 5, and Destiny. I've played all 4, and while I'll admit that there are probably better options out there, I have to agree that each of those games did have great music that elevated the games to a new level. It makes me happy to see that OSTs are getting their own chance to shine, and I'm sure that the appreciation for video game soundtracks will only increase in the future. In its current state, the genre is in an odd place. You won't hear these soundtracks on the radio, but they also aren't on the same level of appreciation as movie soundtracks, but that might be changing. A recent article in the Associated Press discussed the growth of the genre over the past couple of decades, and pointed to the increased appearance of orchestral performances in famous concert halls that featured video game composers. The London Symphony Orchestra paid homage to Nobuo Uematsu by playing Final Fantasy music for a crowd who came specifically to hear video game music. Also part of the retro gaming concert was Koji Kondo of Super Mario and Zelda fame, and Ymir Noon of World of Warcraft and Overwatch. According to her, in 15 years' time, game music will be a main staple of the orchestral season. She says, "This is crazy to think of. Today, more young people are listening to orchestral music through the medium of their video game consoles than have ever listened to orchestral music." However, she also added that sometimes she still encounters snobism from orchestras, saying that they saw Pong once and that's video game music to them, you know? But halfway through the first rehearsal, their attitude has changed. And then they walk out on stage and the audience treats them like they're the Rolling Stones. She also noted that we recently passed the 30th anniversary of the first game music concert when the Tokyo Strings Ensemble performed Dragon Quest at Tokyo's Suntory Hall in August 1987, and now there are 6 touring shows of symphonic game music. She concluded by saying that, "This is just the best way, the most fun way to introduce kids to the instruments of the orchestra. It may be the first time ever that they are that close to a cellist, and that's really exciting for me." Her words are representative of the fact that video game music isn't what it used to be. It's now a legitimate industry that is quickly gaining respect from traditional orchestras and composers. As games and other forms of entertainment continue to mix and mesh, music will only become more important. The opening scene of the Hitman movie automatically made me pop for using Ave Maria, and that Mortal Kombat movie theme still gets me going. The future is bright for video game music, and I can't wait to see it grow. With that being said, let's get to the fun part of this video. What's your favorite video game soundtracks? I have to go with Metal Gear Solid 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5, Final Fantasy X, Skyrim, Fallout 3, and Tomba 2. Each of those games have music that still resonates with me until this day, and just playing them makes me feel better about my day. Okay, I showed you mine, now show me yours. Leave your favorite soundtracks in the comments below. This is the first video in a series that will cover the history of music in video games, so be sure to tune in 2 weeks when I talk about video game music of the 80s. If you liked this video, be sure to share it, and if you enjoyed these discussions, be sure to watch more of our Talks videos that you can see on the screen right now. Thanks for watching, and as always, I'll see you guys on the next one.
Jump with me, grind coins with me.